Have you ever stood on a piece of Lego before? Really hurts, doesn't it? But have you ever stood on one of these? This is a caltrop, essentially a twisted piece of metal with four nasty points sticking out of it. It has been used in war since at least 331 BC at the Battle of Guagemela between Darius III of the Persians and Alexander the Great.
The caltrop soon became a useful anti-personnel weapon, equally deadly against horses, camels and elephants. The caltrops were easy to produce, cheap and requiring no training to operate. Due to their design, they didn't even need to be placed on the ground. They could be thrown down and they would always land with a point sticking up. They were silent, almost invisible and infinitely reusable. They could also be used to channel enemy formations into killing grounds, or to prevent the enemy attacking a flank or weak area. They were also used on ships to hamper enemy sailors when they attempted to board a ship. These would have been particularly effective, as many sailors would have been barefoot well into the 19th century. To tread or to run onto one of these spikes would risk a cut or a puncture wound, which would prove difficult to heal and would probably result in an infection, and then most likely, death. The original meaning of caltrop was star thistle, a weed which was similar to that of the weapon itself. The Greeks called it a tetrahedron or tribulus because of the shape. The Romans borrowed it from the Greeks and called the caltrop a tribulus. Although the very first use of the caltrop is unknown, its earliest recorded use was probably at the Battle of Guagemela in 331 BC. According to Plinius, who wrote 500 years after the battle, the Persian king Darius III planted crow's feet in front of his army to restrict the enemy's freedom. Alexander the Great was able to move around these devices and still win the day. The crow's feet, or caltrops, could not have been considered a new invention, as they did not warrant any further mention. The Romans, famous for amalgamating troop types and weapons and lands they had conquered, the caltrop was no different. At the Battle of Nisibis in 217 AD, the Romans pretended to retreat from their Parthian pursuers. As they pulled back, they threw down caltrops, which the Parthians did not see. Horses and camels were made lame, and these caltrops brought many of their riders down. During the Middle Ages, the design began to change. Instead of a ball with spikes, the ball was removed from the design. It was then made by cold hammering two double-pointed strips of iron together. This design became so popular that it has been claimed that medieval China saw the greatest deployment of this device in history. This seemingly passive, inert yet lethal weapon was so highly thought of that it was once given as a gift. Philip of Burgundy, who ruled from 1419 to 1467, was also called Philip the Good. He is perhaps most famous for capturing Joan of Arc and ransoming her to the English. But he also included caltrops as part of his niece's dowry when she was to be married. Moving on roughly 100 years, we see Henry VIII on the throne of England. Henry was an avid supporter of new weapons, but also saw the benefits of older technology, such as the longbow. In the King's Papers of December 1523, he writes, "Expects many will be glad to serve him with 2 men and 6 horses for 20 or 22 pence a day. For if the horses are taken by the chances of war, the king bears the loss. Carters should wear for their badge a red cross or the token of a horse comb. The king's bowyer should have charge of all the bows, and give out none without warrant, except in time of need, in which case he must call for his discharge from the master of the ordnance as soon as possible. The king's fletcher, with 6 or 8 under him, must likewise take charge of the arrows, the king allowing them hammers and other conveniences. all spears and morris spikes, stakes, lave stakes and caltrops, fighting bills, scythes, sickles and axes, shovels, spades and mattocks, gunpowder and touch powder, gunstones and pellets, bowstrings, cables and other ropes, cressets, candles, lanterns and maces, tallow, soap, plates, broad nails for carts, and plate for charging ladles must be under the charge of clerks and yeomen. Not only was the caltrop mentioned in Henry's requirements for war, but we also have the mention of the caltrop in a Tudor inventory. It is interesting to see so many caltrops stocked in France, as the danger from attack from cavalry was more acute than in England. Moving from Henry VIII to James I of England, the caltrop, it appears, moved across the Atlantic to the newly founded settlement of Jamestown in Virginia. Archaeological digs have brought up caltrops, which were thought to have been used against surprise attacks from the Native Americans, or Spanish raiders from the sea. Despite the improvement of firearms, cannons and tactics through the 17th century, the English civil wars of the 1640s and 1650s still saw the use of the caltrop. This caltrop in Godalming Museum was found in 1903, when foundations for an extension to convent buildings in Roehampton were being dug. The museum believes that they were not only used to cause injuries to man and beast, but also they were put in water barrels to foul the water and therefore introduce infection and disease. In the 1920s, workers were removing debris from Goodrich Castle, and they came across the castle's former well filled with rubble. This well had taken a direct hit from a shell during the war, most likely from Roaring Meg. When they reached the bottom, 166 feet down, they found, along with shell fragments, a whole range of military and domestic items. Amongst this bric-a-brac was a caltrop. The idea of the caltrop